Welcome to the Hodja on Architecture podcast. AI and Architectural Design, Chapter 7. AI as Cultural Mediator, East meets West in Design Thinking. In the previous chapter, we examined how authorship becomes hybrid in AI-driven design, shifting from producing ideas to guiding and evaluating possibilities. The designer was no longer positioned as the sole originator, but as an active agent within a distributed process. Creativity emerged through interaction, shaped by decisions rather than singular moments of invention. But once authorship becomes hybrid, another question inevitably follows. How does this process operate across different cultural contexts? If design thinking is already a negotiation between human and system, what happens when it becomes a negotiation between cultures as well? Cultural frameworks have always shaped architecture. Spatial organization, material choices, symbolic meanings, and even the perception of scale and proportion are influenced by cultural context. What is considered appropriate, meaningful, or desirable in one context may not translate directly into another. Design thinking, therefore, is never neutral. It carries assumptions, values, and references embedded in particular cultural conditions. Traditionally, cross-cultural design has relied on interpretation. Designers engage with unfamiliar contexts through research, observation, and translation. This process is often slow, requiring time to understand local conditions and to avoid superficial appropriation. The risk of misinterpretation is always present, as cultural references may be simplified or misunderstood when removed from their original context. Artificial intelligence introduces a new dimension to this process. Because AI systems are trained on large and diverse datasets, they have access to a wide range of cultural references. They can generate outputs that combine elements from different traditions, producing hybrid forms that might not emerge through conventional methods. This capacity positions AI as a mediator, not in the sense of understanding culture, but in facilitating interaction between different visual and spatial languages. This mediation, however, is not neutral. The way cultural elements are represented within AI systems depends on the data they are trained on. Some traditions may be more prominently represented than others. Certain forms, patterns, or spatial arrangements may be more readily generated, while others remain underrepresented. The structure of the dataset, therefore, shapes the mediation. Despite this limitation, AI creates a space where cross-cultural interaction can be explored more dynamically. In the design studio, this becomes particularly evident when students engage with references from different cultural contexts. A prompt may combine a local object with a foreign design language or merge spatial concepts from different traditions. The output is not a direct translation, but a hybrid configuration. This hybridization is not always coherent. Some combinations may appear forced or superficial. Others may reveal unexpected connections. The value lies not in the immediate success of the output, but in the process of exploration. The designer is required to interpret the result, to assess its relevance, and to decide how it can be developed further. In this sense, AI does not replace the need for cultural understanding. On the contrary, it intensifies it. The availability of hybrid outputs necessitates their critical evaluation. Why does a particular combination work or fail? What cultural assumptions are being reproduced? What meanings are being lost or transformed in the process? These questions become central to the design process. The role of the designer, therefore, extends beyond selection and evaluation. It includes interpretation. The designer must navigate not only among different design options, but also among different cultural frameworks. The process becomes one of translation, where ideas move from one context to another and are reshaped along the way. This translation is not a simple transfer. It involves transformation. Cultural elements are not preserved in their original form. They are reconfigured within a new context. The challenge lies in maintaining sensitivity to the source while allowing for adaptation. This balance is difficult to achieve, but it is essential for meaningful cross-cultural design. Artificial intelligence in this context acts as both a catalyst and a complication. It accelerates the process of hybridization, generating combinations that might not be immediately intuitive. At the same time, it risks reducing cultural references to visual motifs, detached from their deeper meanings. The designer must therefore engage critically with the outputs, distinguishing between surface resemblance and conceptual relevance. In the design studio, this condition creates an opportunity for new forms of learning. Students can experiment with cross-cultural combinations more freely, testing ideas that might otherwise remain abstract. The process becomes exploratory, allowing for a broader range of possibilities. However, This exploration must be guided by reflection. Without critical engagement, the process risks becoming superficial. The notion of AI as a cultural mediator also raises questions about authorship and ownership. When a design incorporates elements from multiple cultural contexts, who does it belong to? How are references acknowledged? These questions are not new, but AI amplifies them by increasing the speed and scale at which such combinations can be produced. At a broader level, the role of AI in cross-cultural design reflects a shift in how design thinking is understood. It is no longer confined to a single cultural framework, but operates within a network of influences. The designer becomes a mediator, navigating between different contexts and translating ideas across boundaries. This does not imply a loss of specificity. On the contrary, it requires a deeper engagement with context. The presence of multiple influences makes it necessary to define a position more clearly. The designer must decide how to integrate references, prioritize certain elements, and construct a coherent narrative. If the previous chapter addressed the question of who designs the design, this chapter extends that question to the question of where design thinking operates. It moves from authorship to context, from individual agency to cultural interaction. The design process becomes a site where different traditions intersect, interact, and transform. This intersection is not without tension. Cultural differences cannot always be reconciled easily. Conflicts may arise, not only in terms of form, but in terms of meaning. The designer must navigate these tensions carefully, avoiding both simplification and overcomplication. The goal is not to merge cultures into a uniform whole, but to create meaningful relationships between them. Artificial intelligence, in this sense, does not provide answers. It provides a platform for exploration. It allows designers to engage with a wider range of references, but it does not determine how those references should be used. The responsibility remains with the designer to interpret, evaluate, and construct meaning. In the next chapter, we will move from cultural mediation to the design studio itself and examine how these shifts affect pedagogy, process, and the structure of design education. The discussion will shift from cross-cultural interaction to institutional frameworks, from translation to teaching. Because once design thinking operates across systems and cultures, the next question becomes unavoidable. How should it be taught? And how does the studio adapt when thinking itself becomes visible, hybrid, and mediated? This concludes Chapter 7 of AI and Architectural Design. AI as Cultural Mediator, East meets West in Design Thinking. Thanks for listening. See you in the next episode.